Well, let's see what we got here. Welcome to Watercolor Studio 42, and I promised sometimes I talked a week ahead of time, and I mentioned something about doing eventually a scene like Cape Cod with the dock and boats and all that. But then today I said, well, that's a little bit more than probably wanted to handle. I couldn't find the right picture I was looking for to work from photograph, and so maybe I'll keep that in mind for another time. But today I'd like to do a little bit of a picture that deals with what we call pointillism or dawdleism. Usually they don't use the term like dawdleism as much as they would use pointillism, and it is what it is. You're putting little dots or drops of paint, and I'm going to be using Q-tips, and I'm going to start off. I did a very quick couple of seconds to sketch in pretty much what I wanted to do, but maybe I can give you a little bit of a clue as to what we're going to do. It's going to be the bank of the river. It can be the 10-mile river that goes underneath the bridge on North Main Street over near Blackington Inn. And so we'll see what we can do with it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off first. I'm going to use some of my blue, and I get all my colors out except the one I'm going to start with here. Let's put a little bit of dab of blue here. Okay. So I leave some of my tubes of color out in case I need to freshen up a bit. Now, normally when you do pointillism or dawdleism, the whole picture is done with dots. No matter what, the sky would be dots, the water dots, bridges, houses, whatever. Everything in the picture is dots. But today I'm going to do sort of I'm going to do a wash for the sky and a wash for the water going under the bridge, just so that if I don't finish with the dots, you'll have probably a completed picture, I hope. See if I get going here. How's that? So the sky, water, and the color. Now, I wet the paper. Usually when I do a sky area, I just wet the paper. They call it a wash. And you just get some water on the paper, drop it in onto the wet water. Okay, so that's an opening in here for maybe the sky. Now, if you want to make a cloud that's more noticeable, you can blot it. Take a paper towel and pick up some of the paint before it settles in. And you can even soften the edges if you just barely touch it with a paper towel. Yeah, I put a cloud back in there. Okay, like that. Now, the water, while we're using the blue, we might as well put in, let me just clean that up to the tape. So when I pull the tape off, there's some paint on the edge. And the water, of course, is going to be flowing through here, coming out. It's almost like you would do a street, you know, wide in the foreground, and excuse me, and then it tapers off to a vanishing point. So we get some water. Oh, I guess that blue is strong, isn't it? Let's just move this through here, like that. Now, if it's a blue sky, usually the sky obviously is going to reflect blue on the water. Let's see. Gray days, you don't get much of anything. You don't get any real strong shadows or anything like that. It's something like this, and the bridge is over there. I just put that in very softly. And we'll have it meander down here. This is across the street. The idea where you could paint this would be across the street from Blackington Inn. Okay, something like this. Yeah, that looks okay. And the water it doesn't have to have too much color into that right now. If you wanted to, you can show some of that white cloud is reflecting maybe off in here, so you could just lift some of the paint out from where the cloud might be reflecting. Now, so we get that part done. Now, what we're going to be doing here, let's use some of the green. We're going to start off, we're going to do some trees, and I'm going to start off with the green. And you don't want to press too hard with the Q-tip, because then you kind of blunt the point in a hurry. Just like you would use a paintbrush, you just barely touch the paper with these little dots. Yeah. Now, sometimes you run out of paint fast, so you might want to mix some extra color in one of the empty wells. So we're going to have some trees off over into here. I'm just going to outline it for now. You can fill it in how much time we have. And that's going to be overhanging a little bit in there. And you notice I'm putting just a cluster of leaves. I usually put the leaves on the tree and then work a little bit of the trunk and the branches into that green area. You don't always see. Let's see. I'll come down into here a little bit more of that. This could be a fir tree, pine tree, whatever you want it to be. Let's see. All right. We'll work something in here. Now, along the bank, this is all going to be filled in. I'll just mark it off, draw it in with the Q-tip. This is going to be the bank. There might be something growing along the bank too. You know, we'll work on that a little bit later. Let's close this in a little bit more over into here, just give you an idea. That could project out into the water area. Kind of break it up a little bit more. Then across the way here, the bridge is right in here, the top of the bridge, and then off in the distance, we're going to have some more green. I'm not going to go up into the sky area because it's probably still wet and everything's going to blur. But those dots don't have to be so pronounced. You can kind of fill that in a little bit more solid. It will have a certain amount of texture, but not an awful lot. And you want to make sure you clean that, keep the edge of the bridge kind of clear there. Okay, so you got across the way. Now down in here, looking under the bridge, you're going to see a little bit of the opposite side of the water here. So we'll fill that in a little bit. And then over in here, there's going to be quite a few trees. And it kind of goes up on a hill here. And there are houses up and back there. I don't think we might not put those in. We'll just fill this in mostly today with some of the trees. So you kind of get the picture how we're going here a little bit. Looks like I'm running out of green in a hurry. Now I don't use the same shade of green. Where the light hits the tree, it's going to make the leaves look a little bit brighter and lighter. Okay, we'll go a little bit off into there. But all of this is going to be filled in with trees. Okay, along through here. Now you could take, if you want, you could take another Q-tip, dip into some of the brown or raw sienna. I got a darker shade there, sepia, but you can indicate where the trunks of the trees are going to be. Up into here. Oops. I was trying to use that like a brush. It doesn't work that easy. We can go up through there like this. We'll tap it in. How's that? So there's got to be some trunks of trees in here. Probably I would be better off if I just use a brush to begin with. Let's try that again. Some trunk. That could be a trunk of a tree there. One back in here. It's going to be more lower in the foreground down there. All of this is going to be all filled in with some trees on that side. Okay, and this one's going to have a trunk somewhere in there. Okay. Cheating a little bit. But if you do a whole picture, completely the whole area filled in with dots, it's going to take quite a while to fill it all in. And so that's why I'm using Q-tips. If you use a pen, you're gonna put thousands of dots all over the place, and it will take quite a while to complete a picture. I used to do that, but I didn't do a full-size painting, obviously. It would take quite a while to fill all of that in with dots. But a small thing about the size of playing cards, not playing cards, but birthday cards and stuff like that. Okay. I think I'm going to have to put out some more green here. I'm just filling this in just to show you how many dots we're going to have to use here. Almost like a sewing machine, with a needle. Yeah, there'll be some solid areas like across the road and in the background. You're not going to have to spend an awful lot of time putting all the dots in there. And there'll be some other shrubs and things in and around. And here, down here is the opposite bank of the river going under the bridge. Okay, so you can get a little bit of an idea where we're going with it. The water and the bridge is going to be there and the trees. Now, what we have to do now, in my case, I'm going to put some more green out into here. Usually I mix my colors. I usually mix green. And obviously you use different shades. Where did I drop that thing? Oh, right underneath the big brush here. So now we got some more paint we can kind of mix up here. Put a little bit of more water in with it. And you can kind of finish off filling in. Go right to the edge. I usually fill in right to the edge because I pull the tape off, and that gives you sort of a false matte look to it. Looks like a finished picture when you get done. So this is time consuming, filling all this in. I might not take the complete amount of time to fill it all in as much, but I'll give you an idea. That darker green there, which is fine. You put some of that darker color throughout the whole picture here. Now, if you get tired of working in that area, you can come across and start filling in over on the opposite corner here. Now, a Q-tip will make bigger dots, so that's helpful because you can fill in more with fewer taps, fewer little drops. But like I've said before, you don't need a lot of different brushes. You don't need a whole pile of Q-tips either. But sometimes they do wear out, and then you have to have a few. I usually buy a whole package of Q-tips and go from there. But this gives you an idea. The faster you tap, the better. Your hand might get tired after a while. All the taps. You gotta fill it all in. Now the foreground, in through here, the grass. You fill that in around the tree, go out into there more. And when you want to bring out a contrast between, the separation between the water and the land, I usually go a little bit darker on the edge. And you can either use the green, or you could take some blue and yellow in one of the empty wells you have, and you can mix up another shade of green. Now, usually when you're mixing colors, I always start with the lightest color and then put darker color into the light color. But if you start the other way around and try to start with a dark color and then make it lighter, you're going to use a lot of extra paint to get it lighter. So always start light and work that way. So if I'm going to mix some blue and yellow, I'll start with yellow first. Put it over here. Plenty of yellow, put some extra water in with it, and then take a little bit of blue, stir it around, and that's not quite enough blue. You gotta turn it green. Then you start getting green. Here we go. Now, what happens sometimes, you might mix the color, and if you put too much blue in it, it's going to almost start turning blue instead of being the intended color green. So you have to just take scrap paper, test it, and see what's coming out. It is a darker shade, so let's go from there. Use the same Q-tip if you want, and go back in here and see what happened. Now the lighter you tap, maybe you won't get quite a large amount of dots on your paper. See how you can go a little bit darker. Now, wherever the light's coming from, of course it's got to be lighter on one side, and then one side of the tree is going to be in the shadow. Now what happens always is that there's always an undershadow under everything. Umbrellas, whatever you name it. Under flowers that are planted in the ground, there's always going to be a darker shadow around the base of that tree. A shadow of the tree on the grass or ground or whatever. Gravel. We'll just put some more things out in here. Okay, you get the idea of that. Put a little bit more, fill this in with a little bit more green down in here. If you leave it too open, sometimes it starts looking like maybe a little bit of snow on the ground. But if you're doing a summer picture, I don't want to see too much snow on the ground in the middle of August. Okay. Here we are. And go back up into there, whatever. This gives you an idea. But there's a lot of filling in to do, which we'll go over and work on that side a little bit. Now, I always tell folks when you're painting, you never really finish one particular area and then move on. I jump around a little bit. I may be down here, do something around the base of the trees, you know, then jump up into the tree itself, whatever. Move around a little bit. Okay, there we go. See what we got there. Maybe it's gonna, if the sunlight's coming in here, it's gonna be lighter on the right side. Over here, it's gonna be what would be left side. And where the object, the placement of the artifice is in relationship to the sun. And then if you want to just do a little bit more texturing across the road here, you can do some filling in there. Don't make it go over the edge of the bridge, though. It will start looking like it's growing on this side of the road. I keep that a little bit straighter and fill it in more. You could drag your Q-tip across there if you got enough paint to do it with. And you can make a little bit of the skyline, break it up a little bit more now that the sky is dry. You can go up into there more. Across the road type of thing. Let's see, across here. We want to go out into the sky area. That's fine. Now you can almost see what's happening here, the shape of the bridge here going across. Okay, something like that. Now let's fill in out here. It gets, after a while it gets a little bit tedious. So, you know, if your hand gets tired of tapping sometimes, just take a little break, you know. You could use the other hand, but if the other hand might be a little bit slower because we're not used to using it as much. Well, in my case, I'm left-handed. So most people probably are right-handed, obviously. If that's too rounded there, we can dot that, fix that up later. Take a smaller brush or something and just hit it up in there. Let's fill in a little bit more of this background. Like I said, you can kind of jump around a little bit with this. You don't have to tap in the same spot all the time. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's use some of this out there. That's some of the blue. And we could always use a darker color in the under part of the tree. And the shadow on the ground. Something like that. Now, for the most part, I've got a little bit more filling to do. In the foreground, along here, right on that edge, go right up to the tape. Don't leave any space between the tape and the grass. Put the tape right along the edge of the tape there, and the grass can, or whatever the plants are, can be kind of bump that up a little bit. Now, So if you find that you've got to fill certain parts of this in, just check it out. If there's too much white coming through, you want to fill that in. Now, obviously, this is a summer picture because everything's green right now, for the most part. But if you were doing a fall picture, you could have a multicolor, and always start with a lighter color, work with yellow dots and orange dots, and work to the brown dots and so forth. All the darker colors later on. Okay, now let's define this edge here a little bit more. The contour of the opposite shore here. You might see a little bit of the edge of the bank, that comes down to the river. It might not be grass that goes right to the very edge. So later on we can put a little bit of ground in there. Take some more blue and put it in with the green. Get some darker shades of green in there. Now, with this, what I'm doing so far, I've done quite a few dots. But now you have to look around to see where there might be too many white openings that you have to kind of close in. Put some darker shadows at the base of the trees. Now, if the Q-tip is starting to get a little bit worn, you might have to put that aside. Start with a fresh tip. How's that? Okay. Now, I can't predict how many Q-tips you need for a painting. But if you're doing the whole painting, and it's probably a larger canvas or paper than this, you probably go through a lot of Q-tips. I've done, like I said, sometimes I've worked with just a pen and ink, a little ballpoint pen type of thing. And that takes forever. I only do smaller pictures because even just a small picture with dots is quite time consuming. A lot of dots. But you see, it needs to be something filled in there. You don't want to leave it too white, it looks like snow. So we'll try to fill that in. Now, a quick way would be just to hit it with a brush, and then put a few dots on top of the brush strokes. We're getting there. Right now, we haven't really clearly defined exactly where the bridge is going to show up. Now, if you get a little speck in there, you can leave that in there, and maybe that's a duck or a bird that's, swimming in the water. If you want, that's what I do sometimes. Especially if I get something in the sky, I'll just make it look like a bird. Add some wings to it and let it go. Right to the edge, don't leave any, go right to the edge of the tape. You don't want to leave any whites because when you pull the tape off, you want to see a nice solid edge there. See along through here where the tape is? Just fill that right in. Now if I get a little bit of blue mixed into the green, that's okay. because sometimes the leaves do have a little hint of blue in them, you know. Fill this in. It takes a while, like I said, to get all those dots pretty well coated in. But the more you work on it, the more defined the image becomes a little bit clearer as to what you're working towards. Now, what I think I'll do here is probably start on working on the bridge. Now, that bridge that goes over, I don't know if it's a brick or something, or cement. Is a combination of granite, maybe brick and cement, whatever. But we'll do some dot texture. I think the one that I normally would probably use for the bridge would be, probably the Payne's Gray. Maybe some Payne's Gray, but right now I don't have Payne's Gray too well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat a little bit and get away from the using the Q-tips. I'm going to just use a marker, sort of a permanent marker, and just put in some of the texture right across here. So you see actually some of the contour of the bridge that goes over. Which is what I'm doing now, is just outlining it. I think the actual bridge itself probably doesn't have that larger or that wide an opening. And then you see a little bit on the inside. That's usually in the shadow. It sort of gives it that more three-dimensional look. This could be at random a lot of bricks in here. Of course, when you're doing this type of subject, you try to represent it maybe as close as you can, but a lot of times it's almost impossible, because if you do every individual, if it was bricks and so forth, then you have to get real fussy with it, at least in one area, and then have it fade away. They do a lot of that with watercolor. A lot of things fade out, so you don't have to do the whole thing looking like stones. This is going to take a lot of filler. Like I said, you can use a lighter shade of gray. You can integrate maybe some other color into that too. If you wanted to, you can add, maybe some more, not so much brown, but you could use a little bit of maybe that rose. That gives it sort of a brick texture. We'll use some of this here just to give you an idea. Integrate some of that into it. Some red into that. Get the idea of it. But that's a lot of tapping there to get that bridge the way you want it. And underneath, the undershadow is almost dark enough to be like a solid shadow underneath here, right in this area here. We'll do a few more drops of red, kind of blending in with the other. Go right in. And that's going to take some time to fill that in the way you want it. Now, what I was talking about also, let's take another one of these. You could take some of the brown or raw sienna and just go along the edge here, nice and soft. So you want to show some of the edging being like the bank, the way it erodes away from the upper part of the land. See, I can edge some of that in there. Here we go. Now, if you wanted to finish this off in a hurry, of course you could go back and take your brush, take a little bit of this color here, and just put a little wash in there, solid, into your dots, especially underneath here where it's much darker. So you don't want to use that particular color. That's got too much green in it. It's going to look like really overgrown with moss. That's what's happening in my yard, stone wall. It builds up a lot of moss. Sometimes you have to just make sure you clean it down. Yeah. So anyways, you can work on that a little bit more. But I think I had a little bit too much green on there, not enough red on the brush. Let's see how that works. Just a little bit more reddish color. Color the brick. I'm trying to be overly cautious and nothing is going on the paper here. Yeah, that's better. That's better. See how you could kind of fill that in a little bit more faster. We'll just do a little bit more of the bridge here. Kind of show you more of the contour, the shape of how it swings around. And that could be pulled down into here. I'm cheating a little bit because actually in reality pointillism is supposed to be completely all dots. The whole picture done with dots instead of brushwork. But you let that dry. Now you can integrate more dots into this after it dries. Now if I brush too hard, this isn't permanent ink. Oh yeah, it could be permanent ink. So those dots aren't going to wash out. Put the paint right on top of them. They do have markers that are not water protected. Yeah, something like that. You wanted to find the edge of the bank a little bit more? You do this. Now you can show really, if you wanted to, you could show some. Oh, not that one. I don't think you want that color. That's all right. But you get something like this that happens. If you catch it fast enough, you can just pull it away. Take it, and you do get a contrast, a real strong contrast. And I just take it and pour down, push it under the bridge, so to speak, and pull it out into here. And that defines the opposite shore a little bit more. So even sometimes when you put the paint on, it's kind of heavy too soon. Just pull it right out. And the more water you put on your brush, the lighter the color gets. Let's go down into here. I take that little smudge out of there, wash it out. Go across here. Now if you want to put the reflection of the clouds back, you can just hit it again, or take a clean piece of towel and blot it and lift up some of that color. Let's pull this across here, go all the way into the corner with that color if you want, right to the edge, right to the tape. Gives it sort of a glassy appearance. Now what also makes things realistic is when you show eventually some of the reflection of the trees on the water too. You get an idea how that works. Now there's quite a bit more to do here as far as defining the edges, so to speak, filling in more. So we can work on this a little bit more depending on what we want to do. I would myself take a brown marker. Oh yeah, that one. You could take a marker and come back. This has happened to be a permanent marker, but you can do more detail showing some of the branch coming through into the trees. Have that come out, because those leaves aren't out there just floating around in space. They're all connected to some sort of a branch that goes in out from the main body of the tree. And what I would do, come down the side of the tree and kind of clean up the edge a little bit. Maybe there's some surface roots that you see around the base of the tree. And the trees that are further away, of course, you see less of everything, the detail, the way they grow. Maybe something some smaller bushes and something in here. And you could even have, probably not use this so much, but use like a rigger. And you can come up through here, just make some grass coming up out of here, along in the foreground. Make it a little higher. Lift up so it goes from thick to thin. And you put some grass along the edge here, or whatever. So it's just a matter of how much time you want to spend. If the sky's dry, you can have a couple little birds flying over, whatever. Put some birds in the picture. Down here could be a little duck, floating around. Something like that. So, it depends on how much time you want to put into it. Obviously, you've got to put enough time into it so it's not visible, so you got to bring certain things out. Now, in this case, as far as focal point goes, it might not be the trees. I would say the focal point in this picture is to emphasize more of the bridge. So having said that, obviously, you're going to solidify some of this area of the bridge, fill it in more, and especially on the edge so that you see the actual contour of the bridge. It's not just some dots there. So it's going to take a little filling in. Fill it in some more, till you have a definite, defined contour of the bridge. Okay? That's the way that goes. Now, you could have some other things coming up in here. Could be some other bushes and so forth. And right along the edge here, I would bring that out a little bit more too, to find the edge. Kind of a hit or miss type of thing that you could work on. Okay, something like that. See this edge here? It's not sharp enough now. So you either make the water darker or you make the leaves darker. But if, I think in this case, I'm just going to show you what happens if the water gets a little bit bluer. Right along the edge here, pull it out from the land. Of course, the water's moving. So if you get a few brush strokes in there that move, that's fine. But you just have to bring that out a little bit more. And if you want to show just some little ripples in there, I suppose you could do that. Just with over, just put a little bit of a coat over that. Now this is kind of light right here, and that's when you pull the tape off, so that needs to be filled in more, right in through here, right to the edge, so that when you pull the tape off, you get a nice clean edge there. And what I usually do is pull this out from the corner. I'm taking out the bird here. Okay, just blend it out. And you can leave a few little streaks in there if you want. Put some streaks in there. Have them kind of more or less go in the same general direction. Now, that needs to be a little darker in the corner. We just take a little bit more of that blue and work that out from the corner. Right in here. Just pull it right out until nothing on the brush. See how that makes that cloud show up more? If you want to get more of the shape of the cloud, you can pull a little bit of the paint here and make sure your towel is clean when you blot it. And you can lift some of that color out. You can see where it gets lighter. Just keep wetting it. A lot of times the artists, they don't really try to copy the shape of the cloud. They just make a hint of it and hope that you'll not spend too much attention to their lack of detail. Or accurate detail, I should say. Okay, see how you can keep blending. Now, if you put another color in, they call that layering. See how that dark that is? Well, you don't want to leave it like that unless you're going to convert it into a boat or something. So you got to take that and pull that out of there in a hurry. So it doesn't, see how you have to pull it back there in a hurry, pull it right out. Yeah. Now, like I said, with pointillism, you're going to spend a lot of time filling in the dots. But in the meantime, if you get tired of dotting, too much of tapping business, you can take your brush and kind of rework some of the texture around. The whole painting doesn't have to be 100% dots. You can kind of integrate, the dots in it. What I normally don't do, if I have the water, I usually don't put too many drops in it. If I'm going to do what I just did now, we'll use a brush to pull the water around, thin it out, whatever. I wouldn't have to do that. Now, if you think the water is too dark, you can come back. This is risky now, but you can come back with the darker shades of blue and kind of soften that into the background. But be very careful. Whatever you've got up there, make sure it's permanent ink, otherwise it's going to blur and you'll lose a bird. It will just blend out. And that color goes right up into the corner, make it solid color. So this looks pretty good in there. The bridge is not overly clearly defined just yet. This needs a lot of work in through here. This could be much darker because of the overlapping, how much foliage in there. This definitely needs more work and texture, a little bit more control. Gotta spend a little bit more time with the Q-tips to kind of bring it out a little bit more. But that's pointillism. I've done portraits. I don't know if I still have one at home of a person I did with just the dots, just the portrait, just the face area. And I spent, I don't know how many millions of, well, probably not a million dots, but it seemed like it anyways, filling that in with dots. So there might be some things that you can kind of do with a combination of Q-tips and your colored markers. I only have a brown and a black with me today, but they do have sets of colored markers that you could use for a pointillistic picture. There's a lot of little, like I said, there's a lot of filling in here to do. It takes a little bit of time to kind of work out all the fussy details and whatnot. But anyways, that's pointillism. Pointillism is the term most used, not dottillism. I have a thing I do sometimes, I call it lineism, because I just draw everything in with straight edges. That works sometimes. Sometimes I have trouble with it though. Sometimes I have trouble with it. If I'm trying to do people and you're trying to do the whole the features, the arm with straight edges, it kind of starts to look like some sort of a mechanical robot type of thing. So you have to be careful. Oh, where I put the paint now, that looks like something building up. So the beauty of watercolor is if you see a stain, you always wet your brush and just pull that stain right out. Pull it right out of there. Now this is far from being finished today. It needs a lot of work. But what I'm going to do is just take the masking tape mat off. I always have fun with the edges. It's getting started sometimes. It should be on masonry board instead of on a backing of cardboard. But the mats do lock your painting in. Makes a difference. There you go. See if you don't get right to the edge, see how the white kind of gets into the mat area, which is okay. You can do it like that. Now, like I said, this is far from being finished. You can put people in the picture, little dot people. Here we go. What makes this tougher is that I'm using cardboard for backing, and sometimes the tape sticks a lot to the backing. Now this is far from finished. You need to work on the bridge, define the texture in the trees, probably add a few more little branches in and about. define the edge of the water a little bit more. I started doing that on the opposite side, but that needs to be developed a little bit more anyways. So there you go. So I guess we're a little bit out of time, so brushes up, and hope to see you again.